to write poems about the sections of seasons. I rarely write a poem about all of summer or all of spring. This is a poem called Late Fall. And this is not the poem I thought I was going to read, but I'm going to read it anyway since I gave you the introduction. Late Fall. In the house of my childhood, the heat made noise. The furnace, churlish as Hamlet's dead father in the basement. You could see indirectly the heat come on, our splayed out cat sitting on the grate, licking herself like a wound. You could smell the heat, an unlaced Havisham wandering by. You could taste it as the must not must of old afternoons, stale red licorice brought home from some silent movie where the heroine was a moth fluttering around the hero's lamp. The heat in our house sometimes plucked one's sleeve like a persistent child. And yet, if I were back in that house and the sensible heat was turned sensibly on, knowing my family, we'd all still be cold. Thanks. I'm thinking now, what are the happiest poems I've written? So this is a kind of happy poem. It's an acrostic, and I like to write poems that are from unusual perspectives. This one is from the point of view of a refrigerator, but I've also written from the point of view of a pork chop. I think that was as far as I've ever gone. But this is The Refrigerator Speaks. Rap me or dare the door. I've been left scraped clean, unfilled. They slapped their medals on my chest, true. They stuck me with magnets like a ham with cloves. So, the only real message is the last one. Empty fridge, leave nothing here. I crave a new light for my vegetable bin. I want newborn lettuce to nestle and fear no harm from love, hardened cucumbers, or callow troops of idle celery lawmen. It would be best with eggs blooming like white flowers on the blue plastic moonscape tray with protective bars, and 2 sticks of butter to garage like cars. Raw meat frozen is the start of every poem. Don't ask why, just go bring the groceries home. Thanks. This is I think, a very happy poem. And it's one of the few, when I was first starting out, it was written a long time ago. And at that time, anytime an editor said they'd publish it, I was willing to sacrifice the 3/4 of the poem if they would just publish 1/4. Anyway, they asked me to change one word in the last line. And I agreed, and then for years after that, I kicked myself because it was just wrong to change that one word, and I think they would have published it anyway. But thanks to Dustin, we now have this new and selected, and so it's the way it was originally and the way it should be. And it's called February. The snowman has crumbled to a giant's glove. Have I made it to garaged boots and boxes of 5-cent Valentines? Do you love me now? Me? Do you dream us into bed, young somehow and naked? Then what happens? Do your dry senses swing open like garden gates? I can feel you quicken when I touch you by accident the way I have to. I feel new repertoires come into play each time I do. Lift me up, breathe on my hair, and carry me. I'm 5 years old, asking you to marry me. And they changed it to like I'm 20 years old or so, I don't know, 30 years old or something. But if you don't have 5, you miss the whole point. So here's another one that's, I really like this. I'm sort of on this positive kick now, thanks to John. So this is called Zombie, not the most positive title, but this is sort of an answer to the late fall poem I read earlier. Zombie. My fingers were double jointed. My hands might have been put on backward. My zombie's blood, slick with oil, sometimes caught fire and burned all night. I spoke in riddles and was known to mutter to myself. At meals, I kept pats of butter cooling on my tongue like lozenges. After meals, I hid. I lashed asparagus logs together with string rafts for a dry gutter. I hated zippers, sing-alongs, boys' laughter, books with underlined words, old ladies with dogs. If Mother kissed me, I had to take a quick, hard suck of air, but she found me hard to kiss. I didn't ask for more, didn't whine or cry. I fought fights I hoped I'd lose. I didn't die. That's pretty positive. This is Sistina. I think I'll be able to read the parallel that's in here as well. I like to read, I like to write in forms as a free verse. I don't know, I also write prose and plays and jack of all trades, I guess. But this is a Sistina, and when I was guest teaching in the high school, as it says, and okay, I think that's all you need to know. It's called Intro to Lit. 8 a.m., guest teaching English at the high school. A cornered girl scribbling. I'd asked the kids to hand in a line of poetry. She balled up 3 pages before she could give me one. Almost nothing managed to survive her strict self-censorship. All the words had been crossed out except the word words, which sat in the corner of the page high and dry, like the fruit powders I survive on in winter mixed with water. Had I asked for too much? Had I challenged her to give me more than she could give? Or was poetry the problem? Had home or school brought poetry to its knees, pounded truth and beauty till words were all that was left? What could I give this cornered girl to make her see the high drama of the classroom now? What if I asked her which words she needed to survive? The class was staring at me. Would they survive the hour? Would I? A march of poetry began in my brain, led by a masked priest chanting Anglo-Saxon words like thou. Words that were saddled donkeys, bringing God's high purpose to us before local dogs could give chase. But quoting the old poets might give these pin-pierced kids the wrong idea. To survive their silent scrutiny, I needed both high craft and current lingo, a poetry written in their vernacular, wolf words wrapped in fleece that trotted to them masked as clouds with legs, lullaby lambs. I had asked the class to write lines of poetry to give me fuel, but now I needed to take their words, make of them a poem to help us all survive. I would prove to them, prove to myself, that high poetry was now. They were that poetry. In response to unasked questions, I'd give them back their words alive and sound the high summons of poetry, thought letting beauty survive and be. That's what happened. But I was the girl, and the word I wrote on my paper was truth. You that are cornered in classrooms, uncrumple your fists, speak the inside truth. We need to hear what you need to say, and life, like this poem, is sometimes not over quite as soon as you think. Thank you. This is the poem. This is probably the, no, I'm not going to do that one. This is, I'm going to read you the parallel. And this is, a parallel was a form, I don't know if you know, it was invented by Billy Collins. Maybe 10 years ago or something, he suddenly announced that he'd uncovered this French troubadour form, and it was incredibly difficult, and we should all write parallels. And he gave a few examples of his attempt to write a parallel. I believed this all, swallowed it hook, line, and sinker, and I'm reading along, and suddenly the last lines were like the, to, wit, bud, blah, 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 and I go, and it was all his elaborate trick to show that really formal poetry was dead, that you couldn't write. This was an impossible form. You couldn't possibly write a poem to this form. Well, I thought, okay, that's my challenge. And you need a computer to do this, because the idea is you take a line, you have, everything is 6 lines. There are really only 6 new lines in the poem. You take a line, you repeat it And in my form, I made it harder. You have to turn it some way, make it slightly different. Another line, turn it. And then the last 2 lines are those 2 lines scrambled in a whole different way. And when you get to the end, you take the 6 lines that you already have and you scramble them and produce a new stanza. And you cannot repeat, you cannot introduce any new words. You have to use every and, the, but, in, and it's all mathematical, so you need a computer to do this. Anyway, my first paradel, I think, was the best, and I was very happy with it. And it's called Paradel on Love. Once our hearts were open, we made love. We made love once our hearts were open. We turned and embraced in huge, unmade spaces ruined by war. Unmade, we turned and embraced in huge spaces ruined by war. Once we turned and embraced open war in huge spaces we made, our hearts were ruined by unmade love. Have you vanished from the face of this life? You have vanished from the face of this life. Still, I miss longing and belonging to you, to have love. I still miss longing to have love and belonging to you. I have vanished from life to miss this longing, and still you have the face of love belonging to you. Our old blind pain did not help us find a way to God. Our old pain did not help us find a way to blind God. God could not let us be true to one another. One God could not let us be true to another. Let us find another blind God to be true to. Our old one-way pain God could not help us. Our blind way of belonging to old war turned our hearts' spaces to pain. We once embraced love and could have vanished from another God to find the one true face to help us. You were not open, God. You did not let be and have ruined us. And still, in this unmade life, made huge by longing, I miss love. It's funny, I told the story, Dustin's heard this already, but I competed in the Bart Baxter Performance Poetry. It's the big performance competition in Seattle. And I had been a runner-up the year before, and this time I was running neck and neck, and I thought I was saving this paradel for the last round. It was just me and this one guy. He read, his poem was good, and I thought, okay, this is it, I've got this. And I started reading the paradel, and I got about 3/4 of the way through, and I couldn't remember the next lines. And I could see my book, my manuscript on the chair, and I knew all I had to do was run over and grab, but I knew that would blow it because it's for performance as well as, so I just stood there like this deer in the headlights for a moment, and then it came to me and I went on. And I won the competition. One of the judges told me afterwards, you know, the thing, you were running neck and neck with that other guy, but then when I saw how emotion overcame you in the middle of the so I thought, oh boy, that was a lucky one. Okay, so this is one, I don't know, 2 or 3 more. This is one that came to me almost full-blown in a dream. So the paradel was this labor of working with words, working with feeling. This came in a dream almost the way it is here, and it's one of the few strictly autobiographical poems that I have. And I had the opportunity to read this to the Seattle City Council. They had a program called Wordsworth, and they choose a poet, and the poet gets to read one poem before the City Council deliberates, which I think is a great custom. They've since abandoned it. Anyway, I read this poem, and then right away you're supposed to leave. So I left, and they had then a series of people from the community who were supposed to be talking, and the topic that night was police brutality. And this young guy got up who was a leader of I think a Latino group protesting police brutality, and he stood at the microphone. He said, I want to thank that poet because I know there are people in my reception line, which you'll understand in a moment. Anyway, he began to talk about his response to the poem, and he was crying and talking about this friend of his who had died, and then he finished up and said sorry. So he gave up like 3 minutes of his 5-minute talk, and I was standing out in the hall watching on TV. So I wasn't in the room, but I got to see this. It reminded me of Tom Sawyer, who got to watch his own funeral. So I got to see sort of an effect, and it was very moving to me. And this is called the reception line. Last night, I dreamt about Aunt Percy, the spunky alcoholic I so loved for being who she was, funny and flawed. Leaving a bar one night when she was young, she rammed her car into a back road bridge abutment, then made her way in heels to the closest farm and called the police, complaining that someone had moved the bridge. Aunt Percy Old was in my dream's reception line. She offered me apricots, cold and sweet. Aunt Percy, I said, you look wonderful, but thin, she said, and it wasn't good. A question came up. Someone in the family needed immediate help. Don't worry, I said, which is almost always a mistake. I think dream talking with the dead may be a sign my own death's not far off, and there's little time left for me to tell it like I think it is, which is the farthest honesty can take us while we breathe. In the dream, I spoke to my father and was glad to see him looking well. The last real time was in a Scottsdale hospital. I went in as soon as the nurses were done with bathing and shaving and feeding him. Garbled as he was, he got out my name and mumbled something about feet and cold. I rubbed his feet till he signaled me to stop, left a picture of my mother by his bed, and walked back to his nearby empty house, meaning to return after lunch. I was hardly in the door when the hospital called. In the dream, my father, too, was standing in the reception line. He looked happy and healthy. I said I was glad to see him. Then I added, speaking from someplace deeper than memory, you're my father, among other things. When I woke up, I knew. My father's love was like a ship, and the ship wrecked and went down, and wood floated to the shore of the island of my life, and I picked up all the timber I could and used it for fires when the nights were cold. When we die, it doesn't matter what we had, only what we did. You may, like me, be so close to the edge, your feet are beginning to get cold. Your dead, too, may have formed a reception line, and so many in our family need immediate help. Okay, thanks. Okay, let me see, maybe one or two more. One very negative poem, and then one not so negative poem. So this is a life, and this is a Villanelle. And I used to write a lot of Villanelles. A life. That's more like it, I finally heard him say. I'd do without the forceps if I could. As I relaxed, I felt the world give way. At 10, I slipped out after dark to play. Father didn't hit me, though he thought he should. That's more like it, I finally heard him say. At 20, I had a stage lover. I lay trembling in his arms in a cardboard wood. As I relaxed, I felt the world give way. We married. For 10 years, he managed to stay faithful. When he erred, I said I understood. That's more like it, I finally heard him say. At 40, beds got blanketed with gray. I wanted to die gracefully if I could. As I relaxed, I felt the world give way. I dream of God, discover I can pray, can be obedient for my own good. That's more like it, I finally hear him say. As I relax, I feel the world give way. Okay, thank you. So positive. This is very positive. And again, this is one of the few, I seem to be reading more of autobiography tonight, and it's called When I Was Crazy. When I was crazy, a psychiatrist had me look at drawings to find out what was wrong with them. He insisted, so I locked my eyes on each black and white square, but there was one whose fault I couldn't make myself make out. A winter landscape where everything fit. Tracks across the snow, the receding back of a small, dark man, circling birds. I finally quit looking, admitted I couldn't find a mistake. The doctor made a large black mark on his sheet. There are 2 errors in that one, he said. You should note first that the picture lacks shadows, despite the clean winter day, the sun low in the sky. Secondly, the man's tracks start in mid-snow. I could hardly sit still. I felt my irregular heart contract to something like a knot of intricate daring that nothing could distress. There, in the exact spot where others drifted to cold conclusions, someone had made a start. Thank you very much. Thank you.
As an added bonus, we managed to get a Poets and Writers grant for Lyn. So I'd like her to come and accept this. This is a check. There you go. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I want you to know the other day we were at a bookstore and I was looking at, what's her name's, Aliki
Barnstone's
poems, and I was thinking, okay, if it's $15 or under, I'll buy it. And it wasn't, it was over, so I didn't buy it, it was there on the thing, and then I thought, oh, what the heck, I can afford $18. I went back to get it, and it was gone. And I thought, well, how can this be? And then just a couple minutes later, Dustin gave me the copy.